What's going on, guys? It's going to be our Summary Markets Week 73 and our weekly watch list. Hope you guys had a really good weekend. If you guys are American, hopefully you guys had a good 4th of July. Let's get started. So first off, we're going to start with SPY as always. SPY had a really strong week last week, breaking out of our secondary breakout zone, which is 425 to 428. And then we saw that massive continuation on Friday. So really good week. If it can hold above like 430, which is that local gap, then we most likely will see 440 to 441 very soon. Now, if we zoom into the lower time frames, we can see that we are leaving some unfilled gaps below us. So these are going to be a little worrying. The farther we get away from them, the more likely we are going to come back to retest them. And the problem is, the farther we get away, the more it has to pull back to retest them, right? So we don't want it to get too far away, or it's going to be a nasty pullback that has to happen in order to fill these gaps, okay? So the gaps that you want to pay most attention to are 430 and 428. These are the most local gaps. We still have a few below us that have not been filled either, around 425 and 423, but those are a little farther away. So the local gaps that you really want to watch for this week are 430 and 428. Now, I'm not calling for a massive pullback. I don't think we're just going to nuke right into these levels. But if we do start to pull back, maybe the sellers get a little strong, the buyers lose steam on the highs here. Maybe we do come back and target those to the downside. For now, I would definitely lean bullish. We looked really strong last week, even had very good continuation on Friday. So the buyers are definitely there. So even if we do pull back to fill those two local gaps, as long as we stay above the gaps after they have been filled, so like say we come down to 428 and then we bounce a little bit, as long as it can stay above that 428, I would still lean bullish, okay? So your overall target would be around 441. Short term, you could target like 436, but I would definitely be looking for that upper level farther out. All right, moving on to gold. Gold had a pretty nasty pullback the past few weeks. We put in almost a double bottom here. It tried to put in like a bulldog, which is currently still forming. But we did put in a nice little bull div here. So if this can pull back just a little bit, it would put in like a little miniature bulldog, and then we could bounce out of that into that like 1813 to 1830 resistance, okay? So for right now, I would say as long as you hold above like 1770, you are decently bullish. I wouldn't say you're like aggressively bullish. This is going to bounce very hard. But as long as you hold above 1770, you shouldn't be selling off very rapidly. Now, we did talk about in the last video how if you pulled back, these levels were going to be likely where you bounced. The range levels, right? The range high, the range low, and the mid-range. And we are currently bouncing off the range high. So for right now, that support is very strong. If you do lose that level, you want to look for the mid-range around 1713, and then the low of the range around 1673. Okay, so for now you're still bullish, but like I said, you could have a little micro pullback, put in that bulldog. As long as you stay above 1770, you should push higher. Overall, long term, you're not bullish until you reclaim that 50-day. If we can reclaim that 50, then we're looking for these upper levels, okay? So for now, I would lean slightly bullish, but if we do lose 1770, I would be a little more bearish, okay? All right, moving on to oil, still continuing its strong uptrend here. They had a big OPEC meeting this weekend, so we're going to have to see how the markets react to that when it opens back up. I think it's later today. It should open up in a few hours, if not tomorrow. But we'll see how the oil market responds to that OPEC meeting. I didn't read too much into it, but it sounded like they couldn't come to a full agreement. So it might see a little bit of a pullback. But if we do break like 78, we should be seeing like an 82 to 83 target area. If it does pull back below 72, then you want to be looking for around 70 and then 68. If you lose 68, then you're getting a little more bearish because that would be the 50-day moving average. Okay. Moving on to Bitcoin, nothing has really changed with Bitcoin. You're still ranging. It's been ranging for quite some time now, basically since that sell-off, so 47 days. We have retested the range low. We have retested the range high. We have basically just been stuck between the 41,000 to 28,000 for this entire period. We've had a couple moments where it tried to break out of the range, where like this move here tried really hard, but then it couldn't find any buyers. This move here tried really hard, but it couldn't get back below the range low. I would say with the OTS trail and the 50-day moving average catching up, this range is not going to last much longer. If I had to make a guess, I would say within the next 10 days, within the next 10 bars, this range will be broken to the upside or the downside. If not completely broken, I think we will see a bias within those 10 days. We'll see some, maybe a spike and then the consolidation up here, or maybe a failure, then a consolidation down here. We should know what side we're going to break this range within 10 days. At most, like 2 weeks. But I do not think this is going to last much longer. I think we will see a definitive move most likely this week. And the clues that you want to look for to kind of see which way this range is going to break is if we reclaim the 50-day moving average and the OTS trail here. So let's say we reclaim like 38,000. Now, typically, I would say to respect the range. So sell the highs, buy the lows, right? Respect the range. In this instance, if we do pop up here and then reclaim this level, I would probably be very cautious about selling the high there, because that would be reclaiming the 50 and the OTS trail and the pivot and most of these local highs that we've already put in. So you could sell the highs, but I would have a very tight stop loss probably above the range in case we do start to break out higher. But I would not be as aggressive selling the highs as I was before in the range, okay? Same thing for the lows. If we do come back down here and we break these local levels right here, kind of like this little bear flag, I would not be very aggressive in buying the lows down here. It did work the past few times, but I don't know if it's going to work as aggressively this time. This would be a complete failure of the mid-range, the OTS trail, the 50-day, the local pivot. There are a lot of levels that we put in that we would be failing completely if we do sell off right here. So I would not be as aggressive down there. But once again, you could respect the range and buy the lows, but you need to have a pretty tight stop loss. Where I would like to buy the lows more so than the range low would be this pivot here around 24,000. And then if we zoom out, we can also see there is a lot of support around that 20 to 21,000. And if we zoom out, you can kind of see where that is, right? So if it loses this level completely and you don't bounce around that 25, then you want to be looking for around that 19 to 20,000, okay? One thing also you want to keep an eye on is the 50-week moving average. We are currently testing the 50-week moving average for the first time since we broke out of it way down here in May, June, right? So where we bounced on that like liquidation sell-off was almost exactly the 50-week moving average. And then we tried to go for that sell-off again, and once again we bounced off the 50-week, okay? So this would be another reason that I would not be very aggressive in buying these lows, because if it does pull back to the lows again, you will be losing the 50-week, okay? So that's pretty much it for Bitcoin. Let's move on to Ethereum, and it's almost the same story with Ethereum. We're retesting the 50-day, we're retesting the OTS trail. If it does pop back up into that range high, I would not be as aggressive selling that level as I would before, okay? So same thing here. If you break 2,900, look for around 32 to 35. And then if we lose, I'd say around 2,000 to 1,900, I would be looking for around 16 to 14. With Ethereum, it's a little different because I would still feel safe buying the range low here because the range low is so much deeper than most of these supports that came in. So we still have some room to kind of test these levels. So you could be a little safe buying the range low on Ethereum, anywhere from like 14 to 1600. But if you do lose that level, just understand that there is not a whole lot of support until you get down to like 1200. Okay. And if we look at this on a weekly time frame, just kind of like how we did on Bitcoin, we can see how extended Ethereum is compared to Bitcoin. Look at Bitcoin. This is the 50 week, right? We're testing the 50 week. Ethereum, we're nowhere even near the 50 week. But once again, this is why I would feel a little safer buying the range low, because it's right around that 50 week moving average. Okay. So 1350, 1300, all the way down to like 1200 is very strong support if we do see a massive sell off. Obviously, that would have to be a really strong sell off. That would be like 30 to 40%. So I'm not calling for that. I'm just saying if that does happen, look for those levels. Okay. And obviously, like I said, if you break the 50-day, you start to get towards the high of the range here. Don't be aggressively selling this. You could spike out of it to around 3,300. Okay. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe, guys, if you do like the content. We are going to move on to the weekly watch list. Here we go. So a lot of these names that are on our watch list, these are things that we've put on the watch list over the past few weeks, and they're kind of just playing out and hitting our targets. I'm going to stick to the ones that still look really good this week, okay? So first off, REGN, it had a really strong breakout of those levels that we gave you guys a few weeks ago. I gave it to you way back here in like late May. We were talking about how it was retesting that channel. You popped up, you hit our local target, which was that channel high, but then you also broke out of the channel, retested it, and now we're going for another breakout. So this looks like it's setting up for a massive move to the upside over the span of the next quarter, I'd say, like 2 to 3 months. So not obviously in the short term. Short term, you could pull back. But this break of this massive downtrend here into this uptrend that is extremely strong looks like it wants to continue much higher for the next 2 to 3 months. Okay, so keep an eye on the weekly, keep an eye on the daily. If it can hold above the 50 week, hold above this pivot above us around like 600, we could start breaking into these highs above like 650 to 700. Okay. Moving on to NEO. NEO hit our $55 target pretty much perfectly, almost topped out to the penny at 55. You did run into that monthly VWAP, you put in a daily pivot, and then we pulled back pretty hard. But if we take this uptrend, Friday is actually bouncing off the uptrend. It's pretty nasty, but we are currently bouncing off that level. So if it can stay above the uptrend, break back above like 52, then you want to look for 55 to 58 again, okay? If you don't hold above the uptrend, you lose the uptrend, then I would be looking for a support around the highs right here, kind of where we SR flipped around 47.50, and then somewhere around like 44.50, okay? Moving on to Disney, I like this pattern. We talk about this pattern all the time on stream. When you have that break of that uptrend, you kind of have that distribution sell off. You're back below the 50, but then we accumulate, and now we're getting ready to break back above the 50. This is a very good bottoming pattern. So if we can break back above this 50 and then simultaneously maintain this trend that we created from the lows, this could be a nice reversal back towards the highs around like 193 to 195, okay? So keep an eye on that. If you can break above the 50, hold above it, hold that uptrend, we should be seeing a nice little spike here. Moving on to BABA. BABA, if we go to a higher time frame here, we had a weekly breakout of this nasty little triangle here, put in a weekly bull div, broke out, did not like the 21-week moving average, which was also VWAP and some other levels. But it didn't like it, pulled back to retest the wedge, and now we're trying to bounce. If we zoom in here, go to the daily, it is trying to bounce here, so not a whole lot of bounce just yet, but it did give you a buy the dip warning on Friday. So the buyers are trying to step in here. You are holding VWAP. So I think as long as you hold on to like that 215 level, you should be able to bounce, fill the gap at 220, push back into that like 225, 230 area. Okay. Moving on to target, we called this one out around June 22nd to June 23rd, breaking the all-time high. It's been slow grinding basically since you broke out there, but on Thursday and Friday, we actually got some momentum. So you can see a lot of dojis there before Thursday and Friday, but then Friday came around and shot it up pretty hard. You gained 1.25%, which is pretty good for target on Friday. So as long as you can hold above like 242, like kind of that breakout area, this should definitely continue higher. And if we want to take some fib targets here, you can either take some longer term ones, so like from here to here, which would give you around 254 to 253, or we could take some shorter term ones if we go down to like a 15-minute. This would give you around 248 to 249. Okay. So keep an eye on those levels. Moving on to Lulu. We've been calling out Lulu for some time now. I gave it to you guys way back here when he started breaking that triangle. What day was that? That was June 11th. So basically since that day, this has just been one impulse up. So we have not really gotten a lot of distribution yet. A little bit of distribution here, but not a whole lot. But if we go to like a lower time frame here, you can kind of see we tried to distribute here. It held on to a very strong support. You really didn't lose like 362. You lost barely anything here. And then you started to bounce higher again. So this looks very strong. If you can hold on to that like 362 area, our next and final target would be around 377. All of our other targets here have been hit. Okay. So just make sure you hold 362. You could get 377. Moving on to DoorDash, another one that we called out a few weeks ago, still playing out. So we had that break of the wedge, pull back to retest the wedge, broke these monthly VWAPs, or sorry, not monthly VWAPs, the anchored VWAPs. These were the most crucial levels that we needed to break on the chart around 157 to 155, or sorry, 151, excuse me. But once we broke those VWAPs, it was basically just an impulse up since then. So we had a little bit of distribution here. Once again, if we go to a low time frame, you can kind of see it's trying to distribute. But look at the buy the dips coming in. The buyers are coming in and buying every single dip. So it's trying to distribute, go sideways, but it's actually putting in higher lows almost the entire time. So the buyers are very strong here. If you can break above like 188, and then our final target would be around 215. Little resistance might come in around 200, that nice whole number. But just know that 200 is not really a technical level here, just the whole number. There's not a whole lot of technical resistance there. So if you do break that, 215 would be where I would target. Another one that we have been watching that has played out beautifully is Eli Lilly. I'm bringing it back up because you did hit our targets, but it looks like it's ready to go again. So if it can hold above this pivot around 233.50, break above 237, then we're talking about like 250 to 253. Okay, so keep an eye on that. Going back to last week's video, I talked about the shipping companies and how I wanted to start dollar cost averaging them. The reason I did not want to jump right in is because I was anticipating a pullback, right? And if you anticipate a pullback, you want to dollar cost average because you can lower your entry as it goes down, right? So as these shipping companies started to pull back, we have started to dollar cost average them. So I have started to add on to ZIM and MATX. I have not bought into DAC, NMM, or GSL just yet. But if GSL pulls back to around 1680, anywhere down to like 15, I'll start to add on to that. NMM, I'm not really interested in buying a pullback here, but if it does break out above like 29 to 30, I might start buying that. And then DAC, I'm really not interested in buying this one too much. This one might just be one I keep an eye on. But it's just too extended. It's been going on this massive impulse for too long. There has not been a distribution. There has not been a major pullback. So I'm going to probably avoid this one for a little while longer and keep our eye on it. All right. Just a couple of updates I wanted to make on some of the ones that we talked about last week and the week before. We had some options flow that we were calling out for these ones that are marked in like pink purple here. They have been playing out pretty nicely here. Micron played beautifully, pulled back on earnings. Etsy played out beautifully as well. Might pull back to around 190. The overall target on that would still be around 210. All of our local targets have been hit. Another one was Baidu. Baidu broke out beautifully. It hit that target around 203 to 205. Did not like that level. And now we are pulling back to retest the 50-day. But like I was telling you guys before, as long as you hold on to this 50-day here, this could start to create a beautiful trend shift back into like the 250 to 300 area, long term, obviously. But once again, just hold on to this trend here, hold on to this support. We could definitely be seeing a trend shift to much higher. All right. Activision, another one that had a lot of call flow. That call flow was pushed all the way to like November. So this thing still has plenty of time to run. You are reclaiming a lot of that resistance that we wanted to see be reclaimed. So if you could start holding above like 95, 96, this thing could definitely start breaking out of this distribution here. Very healthy distribution that it's been in for the past few months. That's pretty much it for that, and we are going to move on. Actually, I have a few more here before we move on. The retail sector I'm still in. If it can break above this like 98 point, I think we're really going to start to get paid all the way up to 102 to 103, topping out at around like 105 most likely. Next up would be Airbnb. We bought this on this breakout candle here. We did anticipate maybe a small pullback, but I already went in with the full size that I want to buy in at. So it's either get stopped out here or break out of this level. But this is the same pattern that we see all the time. It has a very high strike rate. If I had to put a number on it, it would be a high 60s or low 70% strike rate on this pattern. So very confident in holding on to this for a few more days at least. But if we do pull back below this breakout candle, we'll get stopped out for a small loss. If we can break out here, we have a small resistance. I shouldn't say small, it's pretty strong. Strong resistance right above us around 160. But if we do reclaim that, it should be a very easy shot all the way up to like 180, maybe even 200. So a little bit of risk here locally. But if we get out of this local range, this could pay off very, very huge. So keep an eye on that. Moving on to Costco, we already took profit on half our shares here. I was looking for 400 as our half target and then 410 as our final target. So 400 was hit. We took half our shares off and now we're waiting for 410. So as long as you can hold on to like 393 here, I think we get our 410 fairly soon. And that is pretty much it. Let's move on to the final part of the watch list, which is the big tech companies. If you guys were trading big tech last week, they had a massive move closing the week, anywhere from like Wednesday to Friday. So most of our targets have been smashed. Microsoft breaking the 272, 274 targets. Our next target is 281 to 284. So you want to stay above 272, and then you should get those targets. Very strong momentum here. Moving on to Apple, you had a beautiful breakout of our 136 target. Our next target was 139.50. You smashed that too. Next target is 142, and then we're looking at all-time high after that. So as long as you can hold on to like 136, I think we get all-time high fairly soon. Moving on to Facebook, nice little distribution we had last week. Beautiful candle on Thursday, micro pullback on Friday. You guys know I don't trade micro pullbacks, but if we take this micro pullback here as our trigger point, if we can break 356.40, 361 to 365 should be attainable. Final target being around 380. If you break below 352, look for 348 to 345. Moving on to Netflix, still trying to fill this gap. We still have a lot left to fill. This purple shaded area is basically what we have left. If it can break above like 539, look for 547. Break below 526, look for 522. Moving on to Amazon, this is one of the ones that I would really keep an eye on this week because Amazon has been rotating, if you will, or distributing for a very, very long time. If we go to the weekly chart here, it has been distributing for almost a year. Okay, so almost a year it has been ranging. We look at this on the weekly once again. What does this look like? If you guys are experienced, this looks like it's ready to rocket, right? Because not only are we kind of getting out of that ranging style, but it's putting in higher lows, and you tried to pull back here and then broke out of it immediately with a really strong week. This thing looks ready to explode, okay? So if the daily, this is also a cup and handle too, just once again looks ready to go. It's already hit our 3466 target. You have not hit our 3554 target. If you can break above that, let me give you some further out targets because this definitely could go higher. The next target after that would be around 3700. Okay, so watch for 3700 to 3750. You really want to start holding above that 3550 to 3600. Okay. Last but not least, Tesla. We are still looking very good. Even though it's been going sideways for a week, that's actually what we wanted to see. That is very healthy. We're breaking out of this massive downtrend here, reclaiming the trend, breaking above this gap here, reclaiming that. The only problem is you did not fill the gap. Okay, so if it wants to go lower, you could pull back to fill the gap, retest the trend anywhere from like 650 to 660, but that would still be slightly bullish. Okay, if we can break above 690 and hold, you can see how we've not been able to close above 690 this entire week. That would be very, very bullish. Okay, so break above 690, hold, look for 711, look for 737. All right. One last little alert here. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you like the content, guys. I do stream 5 days a week. Today was a holiday, so we will see you guys tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Also, if you guys are day traders or even swing traders, if you want to watch my scanners, I am going to start my scanner stream at 9:30 in the morning tomorrow. It's going to run all the way until our analysis stream at 3 p.m. Eastern. All right, guys. You guys have a good one. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.